It's time for a change in the country.
I'm very aware that Arizona is a battleground state. I couldn't afford to sit this one out.
Yard signs don't really matter. It's getting out and actually voting.
It's a big election.
I think it's very important that we get out and vote.
Voters across the country sounding off on importance of this election as we get closer to November 5th. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. The clock is ticking, and we are just over 2 weeks away from Election Day. Millions have already cast their ballots, and an NBC News poll seems to tell us why. That poll suggesting enthusiasm in this election is at an all-time high, with over 70% of both Democrats and Republicans expressing high interest. Both candidates are out in Michigan today. Vice President Harris crisscrossing the state, holding 3 different events just today. She'll be taking the stage at that last one in Oakland County any moment now. And a major theme of her speeches today is whether former President Trump is fit for office.
He is ducking debates and canceling interviews. If you are exhausted on the campaign trail, it raises real questions about whether you are fit for the toughest job in the world.
Meanwhile, former President Trump is also on stage at a rally in Detroit, Michigan right now. He just got in the last 15 minutes, and this is his 3rd stop of the day, too, after he made a few stops across the state today, including one at a campaign office, after which he participated in a roundtable before heading to this rally. Here's what he had to say about his busy day.
Which Brian understood, and the mayor understood. How about we'll go through it pretty quick, Dale, and then I'm going over to make a little speech in front of 10,000 people. You think this is an easy life I have, right? I go from here, I say, am I finished? They say, no, sir, you have one more speech. Oh, good, where is it? What is it, 20 minutes, 30 minutes away?
And let's start with Kelly in Oakland County, Michigan. Kelly, does it seem like Harris is leaning into that idea of separating herself more from President Biden? Did we hear anything new here?
Well, good to be with you, Gadi. Certainly the vice president is being pressed on this issue. How is she different than Joe Biden? What would her presidency look like that's different than what the country's seen the last few years? She was asked by our colleague Peter Alexander today a bit more about this, and she emphasized something that we hadn't really heard before. She talked about feeling what I would call a loyalty to the president, and saying that vice presidents typically don't criticize their president while working with that president. However, going forward, she can make some distinctions. Here is how Peter asked that and how the vice president responded a little earlier today.
What is one policy that you would have done differently over these last 3.5 years than President Biden?
I mean, to be very candid with you, even including Mike Pence, vice presidents are not critical of their presidents. I think that really actually, in terms of the tradition of it and also just going forward, it does not make for a productive and important relationship.
He's now given you that green light with his comments that you can carve your own path. So now that you have this ability to say that to be on your own?
Well, no, going forward, there is no question that I bring my own experiences and my own life experiences.
Is there a policy that stands out to you in particular, either?
Sure. I mean, my approach to what we need to do around Medicare covering home health care, born out of my experience of taking care of my mother.
And so you get a sense of how she's trying to address the concern that's been raised by voters, by reporters, sort of in the atmosphere of this campaign, but drawing a distinction that when you're a sitting vice president, she's trying to show unity with her governing partner and loyalty, in effect, but recognizing that voters do want to hear what she would do differently, how her presidency might be different, and it's really up to voters to decide if that response is enough to answer that question. Gadi?
And Kelly, we're also seeing Obama hitting the trail. We're learning that Michelle Obama will be in Michigan next week with Vice President Harris. Are we going to see them through the end of the campaign, do you think?
It'll be very targeted events where they hope to get the most attention. Certainly when you have a former president, a former first lady who are popular within the Democratic Party, who draw voters' attention, who build crowds, that helps to spread the message and amplify the message of the vice president. And so she wants to deploy in key states, these handful of battleground states, and states where there is early voting going on. And certainly with Michelle Obama, she has an organization that's about getting out the vote. Tonight, former President Obama is in Arizona, another tight race where he's also working on behalf of Senate candidates. And so we're seeing them trying to fill some gaps and expand the reach day by day in these critical remaining weeks to maximize what they can and to draw in as many interested people who might really be, at this point, deciding that it's really now crunch time to decide if they haven't made up their minds. Gadi?
Kelly O'Donnell out there in Michigan for us. Thank you so much, Kelly. And let's go to Garrett Haake, who is in Detroit with the Trump campaign. Garrett, I know former President Trump was on stage. Is he still on stage? Is everything okay there? It sounded like they were having some technical issues.
I can answer some of those questions, Gadi. Yes, he is still on stage, but no, things are not okay. For the second time in the same week, I'm seeing something I've not seen happen at a political rally before. In this case, Donald Trump's mic dropped out a few minutes ago, right as he was in the middle of his speech. Not unheard of at a political event. And nobody seems to know what to do. There's no music playing like we saw Monday night when Trump decided to have kind of an impromptu jam session at a rally outside Philly. And if there's urgency among the technical staff, I can't see it from where I'm standing. Instead, Trump is kind of taking advantage of encouraging the crowd and some cheers. There's been some cheers of USA, USA. But as I said, we're going on 5 to 10 minutes now of rally interrupted here in one of the biggest cities, one of the biggest media markets that this race is contested in.
So a lot of crowd work there, a lot of chanting, but one mic, not a backup mic. That's pretty odd. You can give him that one. You've got a good one that's working right in front of you there.
We have invited him. We told his staff there's a lot of working mics up here on the press platform. If he'd rather just come to a video, do a live interview on Stay Tuned Now, Gadi, we'll make that happen. For you, I think, on a Friday night, yeah. We'll make that happen.
I'm pretty sure that's what people are saying out there. Stay tuned now. Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's right.
Yeah, you're much closer than I am. A lot of talk today, though, has been about last night's Catholic charity dinner in New York. I mean, memes galore. What kind of impact has it been having on the daily Trump headlines?
Well, look, Trump is certainly trying to play this up, but this is an annual event. It's always bipartisan. It's always a bit of a roast, and it's a chance where we get to see a side of the candidates that we don't always see on the campaign trail. Who can make a joke and who can take a punch? Trump went, Harris didn't, and he is trying to make as much of a campaign issue as he can of that, as we heard from him today. Listen to this, Gadi.
She didn't show up for the big Catholic event. This hasn't happened in decades. She didn't show up. She gave a very short tape, and it was not an appropriate tape either, but she probably hasn't figured that out yet. And we should have gotten about 100% of the Catholic vote last night because I showed up.
Gadi, I don't know if we've heard the last of this from Trump. I've been working in politics a long time. I've never heard a voter tell me that they have cast their vote based on what happened at the Al Smith dinner. But it does sometimes create moments that people remember. I still remember a joke Mitt Romney told in 2012 when he came up in, a white tie and tails and made a joke about this is what he and Ann wear around the house. It was a humanizing moment for a guy who was being characterized as a out-of-touch rich guy. So you can get a moment out of it, but I don't think it's the kind of thing that's going to swing this election one way or another.
Yeah, those tuxedos are real comfortable for going to bed. Does it look like the mic is about to work here? I can't get over what's happening behind you here because it is going on for so long. It's a pretty remarkable
mic update?
moment.
No, Gadi, can we see, Eric, the shot? Okay, I think we might have it. For just a brief moment, we had a sign up on screen saying technical difficulties, complicated business. All of us who work in TV understand sometimes this stuff is powered by magic. If you can't fix it, you can't fix it. And right now, the Trump campaign can't fix it.
Yeah, powered by magic. But again, he was talking a little bit earlier. He was bragging a little bit earlier about going to a crowd of 10,000 people. I assume that this is that crowd, right? I mean, this is a pretty packed place.
Well, yes. This is the crowd he was referring to, sort of, Gadi. I mean, any Trump crowd is always hyperbolically inflated a little bit. It's not 10,000 in this room, although it is a few thousand. It's certainly his biggest event of the day. And remember the context here. I mean, we've had he and Kamala Harris in the state, sometimes just a few miles apart from each other the night before early voting starts. There is a huge effort to kind of generate momentum going into that first day of early voting. this is not the moment Donald Trump was hoping to have tonight.
Yeah, and Harris has been going after his age and his fitness real fast. There are reports he's been canceling events and interviews because of exhaustion. Then you've got this. What's the deal there?
Yeah, look, half of that is at least true. Trump has been canceling interviews. He's been rescheduling events. He's been pulling out of commitments to things like 60 Minutes or like an interview he'd planned to do on NBC or on CNBC, both this week. Some of these are being at least theoretically rescheduled, although there's not a lot of time left here. And for the Harris campaign, that's an opening. That's an opportunity to argue that he's not fit for the job if he can't do the job interview, Gadi. And I think we'll continue to hear more of that from Harris as Trump plays a little bit of essentially trying to run out the clock here on a race where he believes and his campaign believes he's ahead.
As long as the mics work. Garrett Hake out there for us tonight.
There is
Thank you, Garrett.
Yes.
And the FBI is offering a reward for a former Olympic snowboarder accused of murder and drug charges. Ryan Wedding, who represented Canada in the 2002 Winter Olympics, is accused of running a drug trafficking operation. And officials say he smuggled large amounts of drugs across several borders using Southern California as a base of operations. Gadi Venegas has more on the investigation.
This was a multinational effort. Authorities in 4 different countries are working together to stop a large drug distribution network. Authorities say it included a former Olympian and have made several arrests in the U.S., including one in a very high-profile Miami neighborhood.
A raid in an exclusive South Florida neighborhood, where authorities arrested music executive Naim Jorge Bonilla. Bonilla, allegedly just one member of a wide-ranging drug trafficking ring that prosecutors say became one of the largest suppliers of cocaine into the United States and Canada, and was led by Ryan James Wedding, a former Canadian Olympic snowboarder turned alleged drug lord and now fugitive.
This group was ruthless and violent. They would use contract killers to assassinate anyone who they saw as an obstacle to their operation.
Wedding and his alleged accomplice, Andrew Clark, accused of a, quote, avalanche of violent crime, even ordering murders to settle drug debts, including a couple in Canada who prosecutors say was shot in front of their daughter.
All of these victims were intentionally shot execution style, so that their loved ones could see them murdered.
The details shared in the indictment reminiscent of those seen with Mexican cartels, who federal officials say even provided protection for Wedding's operations.
This organization was connected to cartels, specifically the Sinaloa cartel, which offered them protection in Mexico to carry out their operations.
Those operations, prosecutors say, sending drugs from Colombia through Mexico through a main transportation hub in Los Angeles, and from there to the East Coast and to Canada. Authorities have seized more than a ton of cocaine, 3 firearms, and dozens of rounds of ammunition, and at least $3 million in cash and cryptocurrency. Clark, known by many as the Dictator, was arrested by Mexican authorities earlier this month. Attorneys for Clark could not immediately be reached for comment, and Bonilla's lawyer telling NBC News they are not commenting at this time. Meanwhile, Wedding, whose aliases include El Jefe and Public Enemy, still on the run and considered armed and dangerous by the FBI.
And officials are now offering a $50,000 reward for any information that could lead to the arrest of Wedding. Now, officials say they believe he was living in Mexico, same place where the second in command, according to authorities, Andrew Clark, was arrested days before all of the other arrests were made in the U.S. Back to you.
Thank you, Gadi. And tonight, what was once a cold case now heads to trial in Indiana. Richard Allen is accused of murdering 2 teenage girls back in 2017. Now, he wasn't arrested until 2022, and today his trial started with opening statements. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has more.
In Delphi, Indiana, a high-profile double murder trial is underway over the 2017 stabbing deaths of 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German, best friends who were in volleyball and band together. Prosecutors in today's opening statement saying 52-year-old Richard Allen used power and fear to kill the teens. The state arguing witnesses spotted the local husband and father on a walking trail. Investigators saying Libby recorded this encounter with a man that day. Prosecutors allege it was Allen who forced the girls down a hill at gunpoint, stabbed them, and left Libby completely naked, covered in blood, her throat slit. Allen's pleaded not guilty, his attorneys saying he's innocent and refuting prosecutors' claims that a bullet found at the scene matches his pistol, arguing tests were inconclusive. The girls' families arriving to court this morning with Libby's grandmother tearfully testifying about the day the missing girls were found, saying, "I saw the coroner's truck driving by, and that's when I knew they weren't alive."
Now let's bring in NBC's Maggie Vespa. Maggie, this case, terrified that town, terrified a lot of the country for such a long time. Now that the trial's begun, what are you hearing from people that were lining up there in front of the court?
We're hearing they're overwhelmed by the attention and they're exhausted by just having this kind of hovering over them for the better part of a decade. As you said, this started in 2017. It was cold for 5 years. Allen wasn't arrested until 2022. And so now here we are a couple of years after the arrest and the trial is finally starting. And then you have this media swarm, frankly, in this town that's not used to this. Case in point, there was a line around this courthouse this morning when we pulled up. People just desperate to get the couple of dozen seats inside reserved for the public. The person at the front of the line lined up at 8 o'clock the night before. They'd been there all night. I asked them why it was so important to them and what this has been like. And here's what we heard.
It changed our whole community. We've never had anything like this. We didn't have metal detectors in here. This was a safe community. And it's changed everybody. It changed me. I've changed a lot over the past 8 years because we walked around here looking over our shoulders wondering if this guy was watching.
And a lot of people in this community, by the way, say that they know the families or they know of the family. That man said he knew Allen. Allen was a local pharmacy tech when he was arrested. And he said, oh, my God, it was the guy in the store who I've encountered so many times. And those two people that you saw in that video say they plan to be here, Gadi, every single day of this trial.
Wow. And Maggie, we heard opening statements today. Do we have a sense of the prosecution's strongest evidence yet? That video plays so prominently in people's minds, or who the jury's going to hear from in the next week or so?
We do. They talked about how they have witnesses who they say place him on that path. And that a lot of this is new, by the way, because they've kept such a tight lid on the evidence on the case to kind of preserve the investigation. So they talked about the witnesses. They talked about the bullet that you heard about in that piece. That's a big one. They say they matched a bullet at the scene to a pistol that Allen owns. And they say he led the girls down, forced them down by gunpoint. So they say they believe that ties it in. But here's the thing. The defense, as you saw, directly pushing back on that bullet theory, saying, actually, no, they believe the tests were inconclusive. So we're kind of bracing to hear a little bit maybe from ballistics experts debating as to whether or not that was a conclusive test actually linking Allen to this crime. Keep in mind, Gadi, this trial is expected to last for a month with a total of 170 witnesses from both sides.
Wow, such a horrific crime. Maggie Vespa, thank you. And a Texas death row inmate who was hours away from execution last night has lived to fight another day. Robert Robertson was convicted of murder based on the now controversial diagnosis we know as shaken baby syndrome. And he was granted a stay of execution last night so he can testify about that diagnosis at the state capitol. NBC News anchor Lester Holt has the latest.
Tonight, Robert Robertson is off death watch, back on death row, where he has waited for the past 21 years to die, and where I recently met him.
You're about to be put to death.
Yes, sir. Last night, outside the prison in Huntsville, family and supporters embracing when news came a stay of execution had been granted after an excruciating roller coaster overnight that brought Robertson within 90 minutes of receiving a lethal injection. The stay granted by the Texas Supreme Court after a stunning move by a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers.
We believe this to be an innocent man where the facts have not come out.
A legislative committee crafting an unprecedented plan to spare Robertson's life by serving him with a subpoena to appear before the committee next Monday. A hearing the court noted he cannot attend if he is dead.
I would love to see him get a new trial. There is so much that was thrown out on hearsay, medical experts, things that were not allowed.
Veteran Texas criminal attorney Brian Weiss, who is not involved in the case, calling the legal twists unheard of.
What happened yesterday, in a word, was extraordinary. In the 45 years since I've left the Court of Criminal Appeals, I've never seen any fact pattern that comes within an area code of what happened.
Robertson was convicted in the 2002 shaken baby death of his 2-year-old daughter, a now broadly discredited medical diagnosis.
I couldn't believe it, because I was accused of, I lost her, but then I was accused of her death,
Robertson, who spent what he thought to be his last hours with family and his spiritual advisor, now hoping lawmakers can give him what the courts have not, his life.
Lester Holt, thank you. And we've got legal analyst Danny Savalos that joins us now for more on this. Danny, let's start with the legal maneuver by Texas lawmakers and Robertson's legal team here. Are you surprised that it worked?
I mean, I'm surprised that it even began, let alone that it worked. And you heard in the package, I mean, this is not something that's done. And I wonder aloud if it's the kind of thing that is a harbinger of things to come. Can a legislature, if they don't like the outcome of a criminal case and a death penalty, an execution that's scheduled, can they issue a subpoena and somehow stall the execution? That appears to be a yes, although it's not precedential. It would be interesting to see if legislatures continue to get involved in judicial branch criminal justice determinations, including executions.
Yeah, especially when you factor in the possibility that you could see other states trying to issue subpoenas to states that may have different laws on the books. It's pretty wild stuff. And then you've got a death row inmate that's going to be testifying now in front of lawmakers. Like, what do the logistics of that look like?
Well, again, I mean, the transportation is always a logistical difficulty, but also, I mean, in reality, I'm not so certain that the legislatures truly are interested in his actual testimony. I believe the subpoena was more likely just intended to halt or stall the execution. But yes, they may want to have actual hearings on, let's say, the junk science law or his experience or something like that, and maybe draw more attention and maybe just make that little extra push. Look, in the world of criminal defense, you try absolutely everything. And that's what happened in this case. There was a petition to the Supreme Court, totally separate from this legislative subpoena. It had virtually no chance, but you try it anyway. That's what you do in criminal defense. You try absolutely everything you can, even if your percentage odds are in the 1% to 2% success rate.
And then that leads us to the shaken baby syndrome debate. I mean, there's a legislative subpoena that does have the power to bring him in clearly, but if what they're going to do is just debate this, is that going to have any legal bearing on his case, or do they actually have to pass some laws here?
None whatsoever, at least from if you're asking from the evidentiary standpoint of the junk science law in Texas. And that law says, essentially, it gives convicted criminals a chance to challenge the junk science used in their case. But the problem with this case is that even though SBS, shaken baby syndrome, and the triad of symptoms that are classically used, even though they've fallen into some disfavor, other courts, and this was cited by the prosecutors, have gone so far to say it's not junk science. Rather, it's an issue of fact. So it becomes a battle of the experts. And that's a very big difference. It may be a disputed science to some degree. That doesn't make it a junk science. At least that's the argument of the prosecutors. But you're absolutely right in that this is a syndrome that has come under a lot of criticism in the last few decades. And the real issue is whether or not it actually is junk science or just something you have to hire competing experts and have them battle it out in trial.
Danny Savalos, thank you. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, power gets cut to at least a dozen California counties over wildfire concerns, how the Diablo wind is adding fuel to fears. Plus, Tesla's self-driving software is under investigation. NBC's Maya Eglin joins us with more on what officials are looking for and how this could impact your ride. And tens of millions of dollars in bets are being placed on Donald Trump to win the election, and no one has any clue who is behind millions of dollars of those wagers. We're going to dive into the world of election betting sites with our Brian Chung later this hour in the future of everything, so stay tuned. Hey, welcome back, and here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. House Democrats are claiming that Secret Service agents protecting Donald Trump were overcharged during stays at his D.C. hotel. The House Oversight Report tracked Donald Trump's spending at the hotel during the first year of his presidency, and they allege that in some cases the Trump Corporation jacked up the prices more than 300% of the approved government per diem rate. In a statement, the Trump campaign called the accusations false and that voters would reject these attacks. And in Arizona, prosecutors have dropped all charges against a deaf black man who had cerebral palsy that was beaten by police in Phoenix. Maricopa County attorney said that she made the decision after promising to review the evidence, including this body cam footage. And that news comes after some widespread outcry in support of the 34-year-old victim there. And in Tennessee, a panel of judges ruling that doctors cannot be disciplined for performing emergency abortions. The ruling also expanded on what qualifies as a medical exemption, adding conditions such as preeclampsia and mirror syndrome, but the judge warns that doctors could still risk criminal charges. And an inmate who escaped from a South Carolina detention center has been recaptured, but there are 3 others that are still on the run. We're told the men who were in an overflow area of the center scaled a barbed wire fence to get out. The 23-year-old man who was caught was found trying to break into a car. And the FAA is investigating another close call, this time in Austin, Texas, where a small plane unexpectedly entered the flight path of an American Airlines jet that was about to land. An alarm went off, forcing that 737 to climb. But then there was another near miss with a different small airplane. There were no actual collisions and, fortunately, no reported injuries. And thousands of people have been without power in northern and central California today. Now, this is not storm related. It is being done preemptively, they say, to lessen the risk of wildfires. The so-called Diablo winds are in the forecast, and that means gusts as strong as 65 miles an hour. And with dry conditions, CAL FIRE is calling for everyone to be on high alert. And it turns out those moves might have been for good reason. Around 1 p.m., a wildfire broke out between San Francisco and Sacramento. So far, the hay fire has burned a few hundred acres. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent David Noriega. David, we know what can happen once those Santa Ana winds, those Diablo winds, start blowing, and there's a fire here. But cutting power before it happens, is that going to be the new normal?
Well, Gadi, this doesn't happen all that often, but it's also not that unusual, and it's been happening for some time. It was actually in 2012 that the State Utilities Commission authorized utilities to perform these preemptive, what they call public safety power shutoffs. The State Utilities Commission blames downed power lines and electrical infrastructure for about half of the most destructive wildfires in California history. So this, as a policy, is something that's been in the works for some time. That said, there have been some particularly devastating fires caused by downed power lines and other electrical infrastructure in recent years, so it is becoming more common. Utilities have a reason to be more cautious with this kind of thing than they used to be. There is, of course, that at this point small but potentially growing fire that you mentioned, Gadi. There's also another fire up in Shasta County, the Shoe Fire, that's at about 4,000 acres and barely contained. Of course, the concern with these winds is that they can not only start fires but also spread them very fast. As you know, Gadi, it may be the end of summer in most places, but it's definitely not the end of wildfire season here in California. We have a lot of vegetation that is basically about as dry as it's going to get. And when these winds come in, as you said, things can get pretty dangerous pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the winds are picking up all over the place in Southern California as well. I mean, I was flying in this morning, had the worst turbulence of my life coming over Palm Springs. It really feels like Santa Anas are trying to kick up. What's the situation like in Southern California? Could we be seeing any power outages in the future here?
So, yeah, we talk about the Santa Ana winds here in Southern California. Up north and in Central California, they talk about the Diablo winds, but it's more or less the same phenomenon, right? These are winds coming from the Great Basin up over the mountains, down past the mountains and towards the coast. They're very hot, very dry, and very fast winds. And yes, we do have some pretty heavy Santa Ana wind activity across Southern California, which means that it's possible that some utilities might look at this and decide that they need to do some public safety power shutoffs as well. As of now, that hasn't quite happened. Most of that is happening in Northern California. But yes, these winds are continuing into the weekend, and these utilities are very much paying attention to that, seeing if they need to pull that trigger.
As you said, this is not something that's new here in California, but there's a lot of new technology. Are they getting better at making sure that those power lines are clear from any debris or branches before these storms come in?
They're trying, Gadi, but, you know, this is not just a technology question. It's also a manpower and budgeting question. I mean, we had over the course of what was a very hot summer across the Southwest and frankly all around the world, you know, each of the summer months either broke records or was at least well above historical averages in terms of temperature. In LA, for example, we saw multiple power outages during the course of one particularly bad heat wave. Part of the problem there was not that there was one massive outage, but that utility companies were dealing with multiple small outages happening in multiple places at the same time, meaning their resources were stretched. And it's the same thing with maintenance. Gadi, maintenance is kind of the underlying issue behind a lot of these climate-related problems that we face here in California, and that is the issue too with electrical infrastructure. As much as they try to keep things up to date and as much as the technology improves for them to fix it, you'd still have a lot of old power lines and old infrastructure in different parts of the state, and that's the stuff that, you know, is potentially dangerous.
Yeah, a lot of people get nervous when these winds start to blow. David Noriega, thank you so much. Meanwhile, Tesla is facing another investigation by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. This time, they're looking into whether Tesla's full self-driving system is to blame for 4 crashes, including one that killed a pedestrian. Now, when full self-driving is on, the car can steer itself, merge lanes, even park on its own with stipulated supervision. And the investigation covers more than 2 million Teslas on the road right now in a range of model years. And it comes as a company rolled out major plans for the future. Joining us now is NBC News reporter Maya Eaglin. Maya, what exactly are officials looking for here, and what do we know about that deadly crash?
Yeah, hey, Gadi. So the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration received 4 complaints from Tesla reporting these crashes involving their self-driving capabilities, but also low visibility. So in the documents, you'll see that investigators are looking to detect and respond appropriately to reduced roadway visibility conditions, and if so, the contributing circumstances for these crashes. When we're talking about low visibility conditions here, it's things like sun glare, fog, airborne dust, and this is the first step before seeking a recall. As you mentioned, over 2 million vehicles involved here, models created between 2016 and 2024. One of those 4 crashes that were reported did end up being fatal, as you mentioned, Gadi. That happened in Arizona last year. What happened was 2 cars on the side of the road had a crash. The passengers inside of those vehicles, some of them got out of the car, and unfortunately, a Tesla not only crashed into one of the cars, but one of the pedestrians as well involved in the crash, and it resulted in a 71-year-old woman dying at the scene. Gadi?
Is this I mean, this is kind of new territory, but does this investigation look into what a normal human would have done if completely in control of the vehicle and what the Tesla did?
I think that's the aim of this investigation in part. It's hard to say if a human was fully involved in this crash, in the car driving, if the crash would have happened or not. But Tesla on its website says that these self-driving features are fully intended to have a driver with both hands on the wheel. We reached out to Tesla today for comment on this new investigation, but they didn't respond back to us. We've heard time and time again, though, that they do intend for there to be a fully alert driver with the car and having 2 hands on the wheel.
And just last week, we saw Elon Musk here in L.A. announcing plans to build a whole fleet of self-driving cars, these robo-taxis. They're also just now offering Tesla owners a chance again to try the new full self-driving feature for free. Is this investigation going to affect that?
Yeah, I think it will likely, Gadi. These new cyber cabs were announced by Musk last week, as you just mentioned. They're going to be these 2-passenger, 2-door vehicles, no wheel, no brakes, no gas, no pedals in the car. But again, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration would have to approve these robo-taxis actually being out on the streets, and that's highly unlikely going to happen while this other investigation involving visibility conditions is still ongoing. Gadi?
Maya Eaglin, thank you for keeping us updated. Thanks. Now, turning now to the skies above the United States, and specifically above what are supposed to be sensitive military sites and extremely restricted airspace. The Pentagon has now confirmed that mysterious drones have been swarming over Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. That's the home to some of the nation's most advanced fighter jets. That was for 17 days at the end of last year. Drones buzzing above. Soldiers and counter-drone teams below could do nothing to stop them. And drones also flew over the area that includes the Navy's SEAL Team 6 home base and Naval Station Norfolk, which is the world's largest naval port. And if all that sounds familiar, it's because over the last 6 years now, we have been reporting similar cases in Colorado, off the coast of California, near Navy warships, in Arizona, near nuclear sites. And former intelligence official Chris Mellon has been working for years to raise awareness on just how much we don't know about what's flying in our airspace. He joins us now for more. Chris, we're not just seeing reports of drones here, right? Like, there are reports of some bigger aircraft that seems to be launching smaller drones from it. What's going on there?
Right. So the key problem is we really don't know what's going on. And we've been unable to determine what's going on, even when these events are happening over the Air Combat Command itself, which is responsible, among other things, for the air defense of the nation's capital. And even when these events are going on for weeks at a time. I'm glad you provided that background, because I think it's important for people also to understand this has been going on now since at least 2018 or 19 at multiple locations around the United States and overseas and around Navy ships. And one of the things that is disturbing, concerning, and new is the range of these objects, their capabilities, their ability to fly, it seems, for indefinite periods of time, their resistance to jamming and our defensive measures, and their boldness and brazenness. We've actually had cases where these things have flown right up to the bridges of Navy ships and shone lights into the faces of the captain and the crew. In some cases, as you point out, we're also having reports of unprecedented technology. So I spoke to a sheriff during one of the events out west that you described that went on for several months that involved an investigation by the governor of the state, Air Force, FBI, et cetera. And he observed a larger bright craft come in as he was responding to a call from a farmer. A number of these smaller brightly lit objects went inside of it, and it took off at a blazing speed almost directly over his position. So we're seeing a wide range of things at multiple locations. They're resistant to jamming. We don't know where they're coming from. And whether it's conventional, we have no idea who's behind this. So it's a very concerning picture when the Air Combat Command cannot even control its own airspace.
The Air Combat Command can't even control its airspace, and it's not just one night, right? 17 nights, and we still don't have answers, and we've got, specialized teams below trying to do something. Were they trying to jam these drones, and what does that say about the state of affairs when it comes to keeping those drones out of the sky?
Right. So it's a challenge. It's a serious challenge. And, the first question people have is, how come we just didn't blow these things away? How come we didn't shoot them down? I'm an advocate, absolutely, of trying to get our hands on some of these things. We absolutely need to do that, in my view. However, you have to bear in mind that at these bases, such as Langley, they're surrounded by civilian communities. The last thing anyone wants to do is cause civilian casualties. These air bases are rife with, billions of dollars of high-tech aircraft and JPL fuel and so forth. So base commanders, particularly if there's not aggression, imminent sort of aggression or activity, are very reluctant to use force because, it could turn out conceivably that some of these things, despite their sophistication, might be some civilian group or something like that, and you wouldn't want to risk killing people over an unidentified, set of drones that maybe some hobbyist group is playing games with. I don't think that's the case. This pattern is far too extensive. And in some cases, we've got F-35 pilots running into some of these things at 35,000 feet. So this is something new and different. And I guess the other point I would make is, as we can see in the Russia and the Ukraine, drones are absolutely transforming modern warfare. Absolutely. So this is a huge, whether they're Russian, Chinese, whatever it is, it's a huge pressing challenge for us that we're not well prepared to deal with today.
no matter what it is one of the greatest mysteries and existential threats of our time. Hopefully we'll get some answers soon. Chris Mellon, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Sure. And still ahead, Cuba in the dark right now, what we're learning about the crisis that knocked out lights to the entire island, plus other headlines trending around the world when we come back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. South Korean intelligence say that North Korea has sent troops to support Russia in the war in Ukraine. Now, if confirmed, this would be the first time North Korean troops have fought in a major conflict since the Korean War back in the 1950s. Yesterday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned that a third country entering the conflict could turn it into a, quote, world war. And former President Donald Trump calling out Ukraine's president in a new podcast. Trump blamed Zelensky for Russia's invasion, saying, quote, he should have never let that war start. He also claimed the U.S. instigated the war. We want to note that the tensions between Russia and the Ukrainians predate Zelensky taking office in 2019. Russia annexed Crimea back in 2014. And over in Berlin, President Biden meeting with Germany's chancellor today in what may be Biden's last visit to Europe as president. The leaders pushing for continued Western support for Ukraine and discussed hopes of a ceasefire in Gaza. Biden calling the death of the Hamas leader a, quote, moment of justice. And in Cuba, the entire country is in the dark tonight after a major power plant failed. Earlier today, the government said it would shut down key industries to save fuel, and that blackout is the latest event in Cuba's ongoing economic crisis, which has led to food and fuel shortages. And Hamas is confirming that its leader, Yahya Sinwar, was killed by Israeli forces in Gaza, but the terrorist group is standing firm on their stance not to release hostages they took from Israel over a year ago until there's a ceasefire. NBC News correspondent Hala Garani has the very latest from Tel Aviv.
We are learning new details about the operation that led to the killing of Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas, in the southern part of the Gaza Strip in an area called Tal Sultan. According to the former head of the National Security Council here in Israel, who was briefed by a source deeply involved in the operation, Yahya Sinwar his DNA was found in a tunnel where hostages were held and killed, and this helped the Israeli military zero in on the Hamas leader.
About 6 weeks ago, the bodies of 6 Israelis were found in the tunnel in the area of Tel Sultan. It was clear that the DNA of Sinwar was there. So the conclusion was that, number one, he was there with them, and they actually probably served him as a human shield. Number two, that he did not have a chance to escape from this neighborhood. So the assumption was that he was there.
The Major General also told me that a second drone was sent the following day to help identify the body of Sinwar before ground troops were sent to retrieve him from the rubble. In Gaza, the airstrikes continued, especially in the northern part of the Strip around Jabalia, that is still suffering from a lack of food and basic necessities. No significant amount of aid has gone into that part of the Gaza Strip since the beginning of the month of October. And meanwhile, Israeli troops are pushing deeper into southern Lebanon, where airstrikes continue there, while Hezbollah has continued to send missiles across the border into northern Israel.
Hala Garani in Tel Aviv, thank you. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything. And the idea of betting on elections, that raises a lot of questions. But mysterious multi-million-dollar wagers in Donald Trump's favor, that has a lot of people scratching their heads. Where did it come from, and how is it allowed? Our data expert, Brian Chung, is going to join us to discuss, so stay tuned. And tonight, in the future of everything, betting on democracy in like the most literal sense possible. Now, that's a thing as of a few weeks ago. Just like the World Series or the Super Bowl, people are literally playing the odds when it comes to politics. Some websites have betting lines on everything from the Electoral College and the popular vote margins to the balance of power in Congress, up to the very top of the ticket. According to polls, the race between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is a dead heat. But betting markets, on the other hand, they show a significant skew in Trump's favor. Since early October, according to these sites, the former president's odds surged on both platforms. Now, we should note, NBC News does not use gambling platforms to predict elections because there's no method to how they come up with those odds. And if you're like, well, what can go wrong? This does not at all look like a slippery slope. Well, according to the Wall Street Journal, 4 accounts on Polymarket just dropped $30 million, which, as you might imagine, totally swings odds. According to the Journal, Polymarket is investigating the activity with the help of outside experts. And NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung joins us now. Brian, okay, so time out before we get into this. Like, how is this even? It's so restrictive when it comes to campaign finance reforms and all of our politics. But, like, how is this legal?
Well, and the answer is that it's not in some cases. So what we're talking about here with Polymarket, that is where those 4 big trades totaling $30 million are happening. That's on a platform that, due to a 2022 settlement with the U.S. government, is actually barred to U.S. bettors. So if you live in the United States, you are not supposed to be betting on this platform. But what's happening here is that basically cryptocurrency wallets are plugged into this platform. What you can do is you can put your money into this platform, and then you say, all right, I want to put money onto a bet, like, for example, the election. And in the election, you would see odds of 50, 60 cents for a particular candidate winning. You put your money, your cryptocurrency, on that bet. And if that happens, that candidate that you bet on, if they win, then you would win $1 on the 50 cents or 60 cents that you bet on. But again, in the United States, you're not allowed to be betting on those platforms. There is one regulated platform in the United States that is allowed to offer this. They don't use cryptocurrency. It's called Kalshi. But there's limits on those bets, and they also are only open to U.S. investors. That's a really important distinction there.
Okay, so when it comes to trying to figure out who this money is coming from, like, we've got VPNs, we've got cryptocurrency. How do you even tell who's doing this, and how do you even take action if you can figure it out?
And this is the thing where, in practice, it's really difficult to police. I mean, cryptocurrency is a difficult thing to police. So if these type of markets on Polymarket are using crypto wallets, it's really hard to see where that money is coming from. And the Wall Street Journal reported these 4 big trades. We don't know who is doing those trades. But again, you imagine that if you're looking at this market, you're looking at this pricing. Okay, yeah, people are putting these bets. They think that Trump is going to win. These 4 big bets are positioned that way, but they might not be United States registered folks who are actually going to be voting in this election. That's why there's such an important distinction here, Gadi, between polls and betting markets, because the people in these polls might not be the people that are actually voting in our election. They might be people in other countries, and we also don't know their motive. It's possible that if you believe one candidate is going to win the election, that same person could genuinely believe that the other candidate is going to win. Right. So betting markets are not the same thing as polls.
Yeah, we keep assuming that these people are playing because they want to win money, but, you know, we see billionaires contributing money to super PACs. Like, if you know that you can take something that's kind of like a bellwether and tip the scales in what is an unofficial poll to a lot of people, and you drop 30 million in, and then all of a sudden your candidate's up, like, you kind of get your money worth, right?
And I want to point out, I mean, you kind of rewind here, and you're seeing those stats ahead of you. I mean, there are millions, billions of dollars in these betting markets in some cases. But as you mentioned, it doesn't take a lot to thumb the scale here. And it's not necessarily illegal to do so. I mean, on this platform, if you're not a U.S. registered bettor, and you are not someone who is, you know, let's say, for example, misrepresenting where you're living by using a VPN, if you live in another country, it's totally okay to put this money into betting on, I think this candidate is going to win, and I'll cash out big. But the problem is the messaging. The motivation might not just be winning the money in that case. It might be misconstruing the polls so that people who don't know any better in terms of, wait, polls aren't the same thing as betting markets, they might misconstrue it and say, wait a minute, that means that candidate is actually up. So it's just about the conversation as it is about the actual money that you stand to gain, which is the reason why this is such an interesting and thorny issue.
Yeah, very thorny. I think the CEO of Kalshi was asked about manipulation concerns a little bit earlier on CNBC on Squawk Box. If we have that, let's take a listen.
Of course, one of the big things that people worry about when they hear about gambling or betting on the election is the manipulation, effectively, of this market, and whether a group of people could get together either collectively because they're doing it with each other or just generally to try to manipulate the impression that the public could very well have about the outcome of an election. What do you think about that?
That's right. These markets have existed. They've existed in a number of other democracies, UK, Ireland, Australia. They've existed actually in the U.S. I mean, I think, Joe, you've mentioned these markets multiple times on the show, and the reason is because they're accurate. They work. They work better than polls.
They work better than polls. I don't know. I mean, obviously, we don't take them as polls. Do you see that playing into the future of, like, figuring out which way elections are going to go?
Yeah, and by the way, one quick caveat is that who you just heard from, McCalshy, that's not the same platform where these four big trades that we were just talking about. That's Polymarket, that's separate. But McCalshy is the one in the United States where Americans can legally bet. I think his point, though, isn't necessarily that, okay, polls are not as good as what Kalshi is offering now. I think what he's saying is that in theory, if the liquidity of these markets is deep enough, that people will, what they use in financial terminology as arbitrage that out. His idea is that, okay, well, if enough traders are seeing, okay, wait, people are trying to thumb the scale here, but that's not actually where the polls are right now, that, okay, well, maybe we can trade on the other side of where pricing is right now to get it back to equilibrium. But again, that depends on how many people are trading. And right now, this market is very new. It's obviously only a few weeks old. Is it at that point of liquidity? I mean, you would leave it up to the experts to say whether or not they've hit that fever pitch. But again, it's a fascinating story right now. And,
fascinating.
And, we can get into the econ stuff at some point later on.
Right after the show.
Yeah. I'll put my blazer on that has little patches.
Liquidity versus pollsters. I love it. Can't wait. Brian Chung, thank you.
Yeah.
And finally tonight, a South Carolina boy turning his birthday into a gift for others. He's turning it into a gift for those affected by Hurricane Helene. And reporter Rashad Williams from our affiliate in Greenville, South Carolina, brings us this 60 seconds of joy.
Oh, these are fun.
This is what you'd expect out of an 8-year-old.
Swings, trampoline, toys. Come on, we're gonna go up the ladder.
You know, the important things in life for Grant Acevedo. He's celebrating his 8th trip around the sun, and the gift he asked his parents for was anything but typical for someone his age.
We're watching the news and realized what devastation had happened around our area and in western North Carolina.
Some people out there needed water, food, but they didn't have that right now.
So with the help of his mom, Blakely, Grant started a GoFundMe.
I told my friends and my neighbors.
Turning an idea into reality.
This is what you collected for us. $2,130.
Happy birthday!
Capturing a kid with a big check and an even bigger heart.
From all of us here, Grant, happy birthday. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here next week, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.